for GoPro.
Good video footage. I know it's shitty, unless you don't want it.
Oh, I want it.
Yeah. Go whatever.
I don't want it.
Whatever you got.
It happens.
Okay, so we've rolled the trailer. I wanted to make this 2 videos. Hang on, I'm gonna fix the audio. I wanted to make this into 2 separate videos, primarily because there's just so much useful, like, content. You know what I mean? Like, we started going through this recovery process, and of course, you know, AJ, at one point in time, he says, "It's great content." I mean, unless of course you don't want to film it, and I'm like, of course I want to film it. I mean, you know, I wish on one hand this wasn't happening, but also on the other hand, like, he's right. It's great content. You don't get to do stuff like this. You're never going to roll your trailer on purpose just so that you can experience what it's like to go through a semi-complicated recovery, right? But then when it happens, it's kind of like, you're like, I got all this cool stuff. I got a winch, I got all this recovery gear. I've gone to like training and classes and like learned how to use it all. I've watched videos and I've got some experience using some of it, but it's like, you don't get to do something like this every day. That's kind of the point. And so, you know, of course I was going to film it because there's like so much that you can take away from something like this. And I wanted to document the experience, and it was a really, really great experience. I wanted to take a second to firstly, I want to credit Overland Expo, I don't know, West or East, and I don't remember exactly which one I experienced some of this training at, but specifically Graham with 7P International. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple of years. A lot of the experience, a lot of the training that I got from them, really, this was a great opportunity to put some of that into play. So I just wanted to give them credit because I'm grateful for that. Graham, if you're watching this, thanks. The reason why I wanted to make this into a separate video was primarily because I wanted to really specifically highlight the steps that we took in order to make this recovery happen and in order to do it safely. Because when you're doing something like this, I mean, you're from a physics perspective, you're moving a lot of weight around. There's a lot of kinetic energy and force and momentum that's kind of at play that, you know, if something goes wrong, like people can be severely injured. You really have to really take like a lot of caution. The thing is that you really need to have some sort of training and be able to practice some of these types of techniques in a more controlled environment. I've done some of that. I've done some training. I've taken the initiative to, you know, do some research. I mean, at the very minimum, watch some of Ronnie Dahl's videos, for instance. He's got a ton of great instruction and obviously tons of practical experience. He's been living this lifestyle forever. You know, but at the very least, spend some time trying to educate yourself on how some of the dynamics of some of this stuff works, so that if you're stuck in a situation where you have to deal with something like this, you've got some sort of background knowledge. You know, like I said, it's hard to have experience doing this without like kind of being in the thick of it, but there's opportunities out there for training. Overland Expo is one of them. This is not an advertisement for them at all, but I'll tell you, it's always been a very valuable experience attending one of the Overland Expo events.
We're gonna snatch Jason to that tree, hopefully.
Okay.
We're just gonna create like a 90 degree or 45, whatever degree that is. I'm not a math guy. But, and then have you just go straight that way.
Okay, so where are we? At this point in time, this is the stage. The very first thing you do when you're in a recovery situation like this is you need to make sure that everybody's safe. Stop what you're doing, make sure everybody's safe. The very first thing that I did, I mentioned this in the last video, is I put it in park. I left my foot on the brake. And because, you know, when you put your vehicle in park and you take your foot off the brake, sometimes there's a little bit of give. And then I slowly left my foot off the brake. I didn't turn the vehicle off yet, obviously. And when I slowly took my foot off the brake to see if the vehicle was going to move, I was able to tell, feels like the vehicle's stable. Okay, everybody needs to get out. Undo your belts, vehicle feels stable, move away from the vehicle. We get out of the vehicle, Lily steps away from the vehicle, and I'm moving the vehicle just a little bit. I'm looking at the tires. It's very simple. Just trying to see, is the vehicle going to move? Because the conditions were slippery, right? I mean, it could just slide even though the foot's on the, or even though the vehicle's in park. Everything looks to be stable. Let's stop. This is really funny. Graham, this is what he told us. He said, what do the British do when they have a recovery? It's the first thing they do. Can you guess? They stop and have tea. Now, if you're British and I'm wrong, you know, correct me in comments, but I think it was more like a joke. But the idea behind it was that when you're in a recovery situation, the most important thing, I mean, unless you got to jump into action and save somebody's life, you know. But if everything's stable, if the situation's stable, stop doing everything, take a break, take a few minutes, you know, 5, 10, 15 minutes. If you're not in any hurry, just take a break, breathe, relax, and just take some time to think about what you've got in front of you. And then you need to put together a plan.
You gonna go to a tree or a rock? Okay. And then Justin, we're gonna hook up to the front of the bumper.
Before you start the recovery, you've got to establish who's going to be taking lead, because in any sort of recovery situation, you know, you don't want multiple people like barking out commands and giving orders. You need to decide together as a group who's going to take lead. You got to figure it out. In this particular situation, we all just kind of collectively decided that Mike would be a really good person to take point here. Okay, so we had to get this trailer rolled over. Before we did that, we had to make sure that we weren't going to destabilize the vehicle in the process. And we had to figure out where our sort of like recovery attachment points were going to be. And so the trailer was flipped over on its side, and we needed to basically pull it straight back up. And so we had to bring a recovery point, you know, basically perpendicular to, you know, to the trailer. And so the first thing we had to figure out is where we could pull from. And we all kind of decided, I mean, the axle or sort of like the trailing arm or whatever that's called down there where the suspension is on the trailer, I mean, it's all bolted on. I mean, it would be, I think, as strong a recovery point as anything. So once we decided on that, obviously we had to bring it in, you know, because the vehicle, the way the orientation was, we're going to have to use a snatch block and kind of use it off of a pivot point. And we kind of, you know, there was a lot of really big rocks around, and at first that might have seemed like an attractive option. But as you think about it, you know, maybe the rock would go nowhere, right? But what if this big, huge rock, you know, maybe 1,000-pound rock or 5,000-pound rock started to be dislodged from its location? We're kind of downhill here. And what if this rock came downhill? So this is not a good idea. So we decided to use a tree saver around a tree. We found the biggest, stoutest tree, and obviously we used a tree saver around that to make sure minimal damage would be caused, if any damage. The concept and idea behind it is you hook everything up, you get things going, and you move extremely slow. You watch all your points of attachment, and you make adjustments accordingly. If anything starts to give or flex or move, you release tension, right? So it's slow is the name of the game here. Just very, very slow. How's our exposure here?
We've got a kinetic rope, kinetic line. We got a line hooked up to the rear axle on the suspension there, and we've got that hooked up to a winch line here. And then we've got that going on a snatch blocks up here to a tree. Hopefully that little feller holds good for us. And we got that going into AJ's winch line, or winch. We got a pretty good angle there. Actually, I like what they did with the tires there. If we can get that, just to counteract that. And so I got my winch line hooked up to the back of Justin's truck, and we'll tighten that guy up there so that I can get some forward pressure. And then I think the plan is just to tighten this up, right? So we'll tighten up my vehicle to make sure it doesn't move, and then we're going to pull the trailer hopefully right up. Hopefully it'll pull it up. Weight limits are good. We're just, you know, worried about physics, but you know, this is going to be pulling AJ's vehicle uphill. So that's not going anywhere, I don't think. But you know, we'll move it a little bit, and if the tree starts to move, then we'll readjust.
Yep.
So is that pretty much it? We're gonna pull this, we're gonna tighten me up.
I'm gonna do something stupid and just pull forward so I can get my truck in the background of your trailer shot real quick.
Okay.
If you don't know what a snatch block is, this is a snatch block right here. So this is a worn snatch block. It's basically a giant, super heavy duty pulley, and you'll run the winch line inside here. This whole thing, not only can it spin in there, but it's nice and smooth, so it's good for synthetic or non-synthetic winch line, steel or whatever. I'm pretty sure this 12T is 12 ton. It's super, super heavy duty. You want to make sure your winch line is, your snatch block is rated for, don't quote me on this for safety perspectives, please do your own research, but I believe it needs to be rated for at or above whatever the maximum capacity is for your winch. So you can hook this up, put your winch line through here, hook this up to the tree saver. We didn't use this snatch block, somebody else had one. And so basically, you know, you've got the vehicle over here and the recovery vehicle, the thing that's being recovered over here, and the line's coming through here. And that enables you to kind of change your angle of wherever you want your winch line to go. There's a lot of things that go into that. You want to make sure you've got bags, at the very least floor mats hung over the winch line, and you can put rocks in them or snow. The idea is you want to have one on the line close to the vehicle, and then, you know, 2 or 3 of them on the line. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have more, but the idea is if something snaps, those mats, whatever they're called, they'll weight the winch line down, and they'll just drag the winch line to the ground so things don't go flying through the air. You also want to make sure that the winch line's not going to be rubbing up against anything or hitting anything. The last sort of part of the plan is we needed to make sure that the vehicle was going to be stable. So we pulled probably about 65, 75 feet of winch line out of my vehicle. Justin's vehicle, he backed down the trail enough to where I could hook the winch line up to it. And I obviously used a shackle to hook my winch line up to the back of his vehicle. And we purely were using that as an anchor. Wanted to make sure my vehicle didn't slide back. Obviously we couldn't prevent it from sliding over, but we could prevent it from sliding back. So we just want to have tension. We just want to have tension on that line. And so now that we had everything ready to go, we had a plan.
Are we ready?
We want to go opposite of that.
All right.
Let's do a walkthrough.
So
Just real
Adrian's
quick.
gonna pull. Keep comms clear.
One more thing, there's when you're using a snatch block, there's something called the triangle of death. What that is like within the center here, vehicle with the winch, vehicle being recovered, snatch block up here, within that little area right there, don't be there. That's like the worst place to be. If something goes wrong, you are right in the middle, right in the line of fire.
Hey, the trailer's upright, so we want to check it. All right, we're gonna keep going. Here we go. Hold on. Let's reassess. I think you need to start going forward, dude. I think when it slams down.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we need to start.
Hey, start
Small movement forward.
Yeah, but go into drive and just idle it. If I want you to go, I'll do that. Okay, so
Here we go. Right there. Stop.
Okay, all right, sit tight.
Okay, so at this juncture, we're almost done. There's a couple of more points of risk. Obviously, we don't want anything to go back. We don't want the trailer to. It wouldn't roll again from here, but we don't want to go back to where we were. We want to go forward, but we wanted to make sure that the trailer, because the conditions were slippery, we wanted to make sure the trailer wasn't going to continue to kind of like slide down the hill. We wanted to make sure it was pulled forward. So we needed to change our recovery points, and we decided to move the strap, and this was discussed before we'd gotten to this point, what we would do when we got to this point. We wanted to move the strap from the axle to the roof rack, and we wanted to kind of get the point of attachment higher and continue to have pressure. We're going to pull, but just have pressure so that we could ease the vehicle forward. The plan was to move the vehicle forward slowly. We were actually going to do so under tension. I was going to have my vehicle in drive, let my foot off the brake, but continue to have tension on the winch line. Let my winch on my vehicle do the pulling of the vehicle forward so that it's nice, slow, it's got tension. I didn't want to spin the tires. I didn't want to deal with any sort of sliding or traction issues or anything like that. We wanted it to be very, very slow and very controlled. We wanted the whole vehicle arrangement, vehicle trailer to be pulled forward.
Because we're on a pendulum here, basically on the arc that we want to go on. Yeah. So it's gonna be good.
We don't want to be.
Once everyone's clear, pull a little tension. I just don't want to like put too much on that rack. But once we're all ready and cleared out of here, you'll pull it up a little bit, and then you'll be in drive, but don't try and gun it. You're just gonna go at the speed of your winch.
Got it.
Slow and steady. I'll call out stop, and that's gonna be stop for everyone. This isn't too scary. Not like a ton of tension, so we can readjust max tracks if we're going on different lines or finding that we're slipping. Winching, only winching.
Okay, good. Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. All right, everyone, clear out.
Okay, so at this point we're pretty much clear. We're pretty much in the clear. There's a couple of things I just really wanted to emphasize here. When you're doing something like this, you can make some pretty educated assumptions on like what's going to happen, how the physics and the mechanics of everything's gonna, how it's all gonna work out. One of the things we weren't sure of is when the trailer came down and, kind of landed on the ground, was it going to bounce? Was it gonna possibly rebound? What was it gonna do? I thought it was gonna be a little bit more of a jarring experience, and really it came down pretty softly, so that was nice. The other thing is, you have to take it really slow. And this is why this is where it becomes important that you only have one person kind of in control and, shouting out the commands, because when Mike says stop, everything stops. If you start seeing something kind of doing something weird, you can just stop. Just stop doing whatever it is you're doing. Several times during this process, we would stop and we would check and we'd walk around, we would release tension, we would just look. And before we got to this last part right here, before we said everything was good, Mike said everything's good, it was kind of hard to capture it on camera, but they were walking around. They were like, let's just look at everything. Let's see everything. We looked at the front of the vehicle. We looked at the front of the trailer. We looked at the back of the trailer on both sides, walked around, obviously in a safe distance, just to make sure that everything looked okay, right? We just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything. I mean, that was about it. I mean, to me, it was absolutely incredible how well this went off. When you're doing something like this, like I said earlier, you got a lot of physics in motion, a lot of weight, a lot of mass that you're moving around. And if something goes wrong, you have to readjust, and it would be expected for something to not work or act or behave in the way that you had thought that it would, but that wasn't the case in this. I mean, like I said, the recovery went off without a hitch. There was no extra complications. There was no like, oh shoot, this is gonna break or that's gonna snap. Like we pulled it right back over. It was like a non-event, but I think it's really important to note that the reason why it was like a non-issue to do this recovery is because we had a plan. We appointed a lead. We talked about the plan. We went over the plan. We executed the plan slowly. We watched everything carefully. We took our time. We checked everything along the way. There was no hurry. There was no frenzy. There was nobody acting like crazy, emotional, or weird. It was a really great team that kind of came together in this team effort to make this happen. I can't say enough nice things about the people that I was with and how well we all worked together. And they just, it was incredible. Mike, AJ, Matteo, Justin, Brad, Philip, you guys all did an incredible job. Everybody just did so incredible in making this recovery happen without further damage or injury. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody stay clear of that side of the trailer.
So this is our damage. So our frame, bed liner, it's all damaged, easy to fix. I may not fix it at all, who knows, but this right here, this is where the bulk of our damage is.
Dad,
yeah.
We made it.
Yeah, we made it out. You can kind of see, so you can see there. Oh man, what'd you think, Ben? Huh? Otherwise, the fender looks okay. This is the biggest part of the damage. I don't know if the water heater's working. I guess we got box here. This is a bolt-on box. The whole thing just comes off. You can put a new one on. Same thing with the rack here. The awning hasn't been damaged. We're good there. Considering the fact that the entire weight of the trailer for the most part was resting on this, that held up pretty darn good. Thanks for your help.
Yeah.
You did.
Smooth.
You did a really good job taking point there. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. I'm glad we got you
Like a pro.
back up. I've done this many, no, I haven't done it that many times. So.
I've done this many times.
When it was all said and done, I got to say, I mean, I don't want to say I'm surprised that the turtleback trailer held up so well. But I mean, to be honest, like I wasn't really sure what to expect. Generally speaking, these things are built, or really should be built rather, to be strong enough to handle this. And you know, when I got back to cell phone service, you know, and I talked to Dave at Turtleback and just kind of not only let him know what's going on, but kind of just to talk to him. And he was kind of like, you know, relatively unsurprised that we like sustained almost no damage, you know what I mean? And, you know, he was like, well, he's like, you know, I mean, we build them really, really tough, because, you know, I mean, that's a risk that you take when you're trailering. If a rollover happens, the integrity of the trailer should be able to hold itself together. And, you know, I personally would not have been surprised to have gotten to camp later that evening and found that the box maybe wasn't quite square or whatever. But it was. You know, I opened up the back door. That back door, it takes up the entire like area of like basically the whole trailer. If it's off a centimeter or even a couple of millimeters, like, you're gonna know it. And that back door opened just fine. It sealed just fine. It was the box of the trailer was 100% square, which is really impressive because that side box took the brunt of it. I did find the awning bracket broke. And I did find that the awning was damaged. I haven't deployed the awning yet to see if it's like usable or whatever. We camped into that night. The tent opened fine. Water heater worked. Electrical works. Water system works. Plumbing. You know, the water pump. The pressure in the system. There was no leaks or shorts or buzzes or, you know, I mean, everything works just fine. I mean, I gotta say, I'm really impressed. I want to take a second to really thank Mike. Thank you. AJ. Thank you. Philip. Brad. Thank you. Matteo. Thank you. Justin. Thank you. I appreciate everything that you guys did to make this happen. I couldn't have done it without you. I mean, that's obvious. But you guys did an incredible job. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting our channel. Thank you for subscribing and liking and sharing with your friends. And thank you for coming along with me on this journey as I learn and as you learn with me. This is kind of what it's all about, you know, and it's hard to go through stuff like this, painful even, but you know, you get so much out of the experience, and I love learning new things, and it's kind of what it's all about. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.